And now on Book TV, it's this year's American Book Awards, which recognizes outstanding literary achievement from the entire spectrum of America's diverse literary community. This program contains language some may find offensive.
Distinguished guests, friends, welcome to the 38th Annual American Book Awards, presented by the Before Columbus Foundation. My name is Justin Demong. I'm the chair of the foundation, now celebrating its 41st year. I want to extend my, 4 decades. I want to extend my gratitude to our founder, who is really one of the great artist warriors of our time, Ishmael Reed, who's with us today. Also want to thank our friends here at the SF Jazz Center for being so generous, and in particular the director, Randall Klein. Also, my fellow board member, Jenny Lim, presently the Poet Laureate of the San Francisco Jazz Festival, for helping to facilitate the venue. I think it's very appropriate that the American Book Awards are hosted by the Jazz Center. Jazz, as a uniquely American art form, weaves a vision of the United States, indeed the Americas, from a thread of the blues, of telling it like it is, inviting openly all cultures to develop, to thrive, and to seek peace with one another. I think in the bilious so-called national conversation that is being exacerbated by a violent political crisis that has really taken hold of the country and the rest of the world, that the vision of the American Book Awards and the Before Columbus Foundation is in many ways medicinal to healing these wounds. It's with great pride that we can assemble such an extraordinary, innovative, and exciting group of writers who I believe together create a kind of laying on of the hands to further that process of understanding and that necessary healing, because we are in a state not unlike triage on a battlefield, and many have fallen. We'll talk more about that as we continue. So, with that said, I'd like to introduce one of the stalwart leaders of the foundation, the board president, Mr. Wahajat Ali.
Stalwart leader. I should put that on my LinkedIn profile. I like that. How's everyone doing? All right, good. Welcome to the 30th Annual American Book Awards. And a lot of you are looking at me right now asking, how did you become president? And a few years ago, Ishmael Reed said, hey, you're going to become president of the Before Columbus Foundation. And I said, no. He said, yes. And that's how you become president of the Before Columbus Foundation. Thank you all for joining us. I have to give you a few inspiring words right before I head out to the airport. If you hear babies, those are my babies in the back. But I want to brag about our board real quick. We have 24 board members, and the process goes like this. Every year, each board member is allowed to nominate a work, and then after they nominate the work, we vet them as a board. And just to let you know who's on the board, we have MacArthur Geniuses, Pulitzer Prize nominated authors, Poet Laureates of America, Poet Laureates of California, we have scholars, we have people with PhDs, we have poets. And so for all the award recipients, I want you to know that you were chosen by a highly, if I may say so, sophisticated, high caliber quality of a board that takes this very seriously. And you are here because you deserve it and you've earned it. And so give yourself a round of applause. When someone sees such a diverse roster, they often think, oh, there's tokenism at play, or we have a checklist. Oh, we need a Latina writer, check. We need a Middle Eastern writer, check. No, it's based on the quality of the work, number one. And number two, the reason why we're able to get so many diverse voices is because our board represents America. We have men, we have women, we have poets, we have scholars, we have writers, we have people of the Latino persuasion, of the Muslimi persuasion, of the African American persuasion, and each of these individuals is there because of the quality of their work and their contributions to the arts and letters. That is why we are able to represent what we think is the panoramic view of America that has always existed, but oftentimes is never given the spotlight, and oftentimes these individuals and these communities are not given the conch or asked to be the protagonist of the American narrative. And not only are we medicinal, we're also corrective, and I think we're also reflective, and in this day and age we're also an act of resistance. But also these voices and these words I think also are inspirational. These voices give a vision of what America should be and can be. And so we thank you all for being participants in that narrative as well. We live in interesting times where, you could laugh at that one again, where we have an orange, thin-skinned man with short fingers who's president of the United States of America, who assaults truth and facts on a daily basis. Too soon? All right, my bad. Who assaults truth and facts on a daily basis, who deliberately courts some of the most vulgar voices that have always existed from the inception of America and has given them a bullhorn. Some people call it culture and heritage, other people call it nationalism, other people call it white nationalism, other people call it white supremacy. It's a supremacy and ideology of exclusion based upon the erasure and suppression of the multitude of voices that have made America. And in this day and age, it seems simply telling the truth is an act of valor and bravery. Isn't that amazing? Simply getting your facts right. Maybe saying, hey, Nazis and KKK in Charlottesville aren't very fine people. That used to be a softball down the middle. KKK are marching and commit an act of domestic terrorism. Just condemn them. Easy. Now they're very fine people and both sides are to blame. And then a few days later, in Spain, when the same exact type of domestic terrorism happens, where Muslim radicals take over a vehicle and plow through a road, within 2 hours, Donald Trump criticizes it, calls it an act of radical Islamic terrorism, and an hour later tweets out that General Pershing, over 100 years ago, asked his soldiers to dip their bullets into pig's blood to kill Muslim radicals. First of all, this is an alternative fact, which I'm old enough to remember an alternative fact was a lie. This is fake news, which means it didn't happen, but he tweeted that out. And as a Muslim, let me just tell everyone that I want to save pig lives tonight. Pig lives matter. You don't have to dip your bullets into pig's blood to kill Muslims. Regular bullets work just fine. Why? Because we're human. Dark humor. But we live in interesting times. And so I want to thank the board of American Boards, Before Columbus Foundation. That's what happens when you have two babies. I want to thank all of you for coming. We have a packed house. This is amazing. It's a good problem to have when people voluntarily come out to celebrate art and words. And also, I hope, again, for all of you here, the one thing I want to say is the difference between the American Book Awards and others is there's no first place, second place, or third place. There's no gold, silver, or bronze. It's very deliberate. We're very proud that on the stage, you will see first-time writers, You will see people who independently publish. You'll see people who are millionaires all share the stage equally. And that's very deliberate. And so we have a communal spirit here in the Before Columbus Foundation and the American Book Awards that is that's not really the vibe in some other book awards, let's just say. And we're very proud of that, so we thank you for being part of the community and coming out today. Give yourself a round of applause to celebrate that spirit.
With that said, we'll move on to this year's Lifetime Achievement Award. Nancy Mercado. Of Nancy Mercado, Ishmael Reed writes, Nancy Mercado is one of the nation's leading persons of letters. Her work plumbs the experience of an individual of Puerto Rican ancestry, living in America. But as a multicultural and bilingual poet, she has an edge, like someone having eyes at the back of one's head. A listing of her entries in anthologies and scholarly publications would take up a number of pages. She is one of those rare writers who does it all: poetry, plays, short stories, performance. Many writers quote T.S. Eliot, but they overlook this statement: all ethnic poets might not be great, but all great poets are ethnic. Hers has been a rise from humble beginnings to the academy, a PhD from SUNY, museum curator. She can write about her personal experiences, but when other poets ducked and ran, she tackled the date when the terror came home, 9/11. I've lived long enough to see some of the people with whom I used to hang memorialized in statues, street names, institutions, landmarks, etc. They gave it all, like Nancy has. She keeps on giving. She is an inspiration to children and to us all, and a member of one of the most influential movements of the last 100 years, the New Yorkers. Accepting the award on Nancy Mercado's behalf is poet, writer, photographer, Tennessee Reed.
Thank you, everybody. Nancy Mercado asked me to read the following message to you. Thank you to everyone from the Before Columbus Foundation for believing in my work. This award is truly a great honor for me. She also sent me a poem to read to you guys. Ushering in Armageddon on the eve of Trump's election. We rapidly disappear all drinkable water, ramming and gored steel pipes like a rapist's penis into the earth, injecting its insides of vile poisons, lacerating its core, leaving warm, radiant grasslands, stippled of dark gray gaseous machines, rusting, oozing mucus onto the countryside, choking vaporous clouds rising from rivers, waterways cloaked with upended salmon, beaver, birds, assorted insects we'd yet to encounter. Mass extinctions of other life forms run amok before us because of us. We indulge in gluttony, zealous for crude oil, nuclear fuel, and intangible futures. We indulge in greed, crazed for imbecilic video games, prime time, and commercial ads, making others rich and our minds poor. We coddle our narcissism, the idea that we are invincible, all-knowing, masters of the universe, superior to all life forms, yet ignorant of countless creatures inhabiting black depths at the bottom of our own planet's seas. We send ourselves to wrath, placing madmen at the helm of a nuclear empire. We fornicate with money and palm oil lovers, torching vast swaths of Earth's forests, decimating acres at whim. We send ourselves to deception, choosing fanciful illusions. We are Leviathans on a global stage. existing only inside the flat screens of our cracked skulls. We sentence ourselves to sloth, lethargically sitting by witnessing the implosion of even our own families, never lifting a finger, never troubling our carcasses out of cushy, cheap sofas bought at Walmart. On Veteran Day sales, we splatter everything over syrupy affirmations that disguise our crimes, that mask our cataclysms, our inertia, our self-inflicted Armageddon, like a junkie shooting up the last dose of bad endings, a rehashed nightmare. How utterly foolish we are. Thank you very much.
Please join me in welcoming our founder, Ishmael Reed.
Speaking of Muhammad Ali, somebody walked off with my Muhammad Ali book out there, so go pay $30 for this. So I have, thank you very much. I have 4 more copies of it. It was published in Canada, in Montreal. My last novel reviewed here, the critics said I'd gone too far. I said, you don't know how far I've gone, I'm up here in Montreal. I want to make a couple of announcements. First of all, I want Justin to stand up and Gundar Strad stand up. They run this organization without pay. And Gundar is executive director for life. 2 announcements. The Penn Oakland Awards will be held at the beautiful African American Museum, Martin Luther King and 14th Street, on December 2nd. So be sure to attend that from 2 to 5 on December 2nd. And one of the recipients is John Edgar Weideman for his book on writing to save a life. Lewis Till, Emmett Till's father, was lynched by the American Army. A lot of people don't know that. One more thing. At 1925 7th Avenue, apartment 711, 1925 7th Avenue, apartment 711 in New York, on November 19th at 2 p.m. there will be a book party, the Harlem Salon, for the late novelist, publication of the late novelist William Denby's King Commas. He lived in Italy for many years and worked with Fellini and Antonioni and a number of Italian filmmakers, but he couldn't understand why his book wasn't published in the United States. He just doesn't know the market forces here, where the head of McDonald's can become head of a publishing company because he knows how to sell hamburgers. My editorial there. I'm still angry. I'm 79 years old, still mad. Okay. So if you want to get more information, Harlem Arts Salon, one word, Harlem Arts Salon, at gmail.com. And Margaret Troop, who's one of our board members, she runs the best book salon since Alelia Walker was running one in the 1920s. Okay. I don't know why there's such a theory of post-colonialism, because colonialism never ceased. And once in a while you see French troops in African countries. I thought they left. It's become more refined. In the old days, a scout would go among the natives and report back to the occupiers which ones were reasonable and which ones were unruly. The native would also be responsible for explaining, in the words of Adolph Reed Jr., what those drums mean. Sometimes a designated token is assigned to identify the unruly natives. And so one of the reasons that American Book Awards was founded was to break this one-at-a-time tokenism that's plagued Black Hispanic, Native American literature since at least the 1920s. Even you can go back to the abolitionist days where Frederick Douglass and William Wells Brown had to fight over who was going to be the designated token. The biggest problem with one-at-a-time tokenism is that the token, whether they be promoted currently by neocons or corporate and academic feminists, is that they deprive others of space that could be devoted to black and brown readers who desperately need instructions on how to survive in a political environment that is hostile to them. While most public intellectuals, most of black public intellectual life is taken up with convincing the public that blacks are not chimps and monkeys. I mean, even the former president was depicted as such in the New York Post cartoon where they showed Barack Obama as a dead chimp on the sidewalk. Okay? I don't forget. Even the former president. Flores A. Forbes does something different. He tells blacks, browns, and whomever else will listen how to survive. Not just as blacks and browns are judged from different standards than whites, it's not a surprise that black and white revolutionaries are treated differently. I remember a Times Magazine article where Abbie Hoffman said he had a nephew-uncle relationship with the commander of the 9th Precinct on the Lower East Side. A lot of black men and black women were beaten up in that precinct. I interviewed Mark Rudd, the weatherman for C-SPAN, for this network. And he said that he had a cozy time in the underground because he had wealthy supporters. Before it was over, he was guilty of an armed robbery and springing a prisoner from jail. Yet when he was caught, the prosecutor argued for his defense, argued for his release. He didn't serve a day in prison. Black revolutionaries will still languish in prison, some in solitary confinement.